Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Good to see you all. Pleased to see you all. Hey, how's it going? Stay a while and listen. Happy to see everybody is here. I know we have some people who have some games tonight. London is here, heading over from Ronald, destroying the 1D&D survey methodology. Yeah, Ronald sure has come out strong against the 1D&D, huh? For sure. I seem to be out of those right now. Perhaps you should try another time. Welcome everybody. Of course, we'll have some people. I'm sure some people streaming in, but yeah. So it's Derek. Hello, how's it going? Yeah, I missed you guys. We were supposed to play Tuesday. We were supposed to have a live stream. And to answer Joseph's question, well, when is the next episode for Quest for the Frozen Flames? That would be the 13th of September. We were all set to go, and then we had some bad thunderstorms. My power had flickered earlier the day, but then it seemed to be stable. And then right around, I think about 5 o'clock or so, it just, or maybe like 3 o'clock or something, it just died completely. And I was like, okay, well, this is problematic. I tried to call the power company to find out what was going on, and I don't want to leave my audience or my players, sort of holding the bag to the last minute. And so by the time 6 o'clock came around, and usually we're online before 7 o'clock, obviously, but before around 6 o'clock, the power had not yet come on. So I made the call. We canceled it, and we will be back though. So I appreciate you hanging out and sticking that out with us, but these things happen, I suppose. All right. Hello, Matthew. Help me out, Matt. How am I supposed to pronounce that? It's obviously French. Is it Matteo or is it Matthew? John, what would happen? The power went out on Tuesday. That's why we weren't able to play. We had bad thunderstorms that day, and the power had flickered, and then it'd come back on, and then like 2 hours later, it just died, and it never came back on. It didn't come back on till about 8:30, closer to 9 o'clock. So it would have been a problem for sure. Matthew. Okay. Matthew. French Canadian. Got it. Okay. French Canadian. I have been to Montreal twice. It's a very nice city. The Paris of North America. So we're chilling tonight, people. We're hanging out. We're gonna talk RPGs because that's what we do. That's why you're here. And that's why we like to show up to all this. But no real agenda. Thursdays are going to become our bonus day, right? And we want to use those to dig into other areas because obviously Thursdays have been spoken for a very, very, very long time for our Spells Rated show. But now that show has come to its conclusion, we have an opportunity to use that time to do other things, talk about other systems, maybe completely rewrite Pathfinder. Things, crazy things. These are things that we want to do. Recently there was a discussion, as always, on the Discord about, every little thing. And we were talking about magic and spell systems. And, Vin, who is, of course, a very unique and special member of our community, was going on about something about magic systems, and we were talking about Vancian magic. And randomly, another friend of mine was talking about how he was reading looking through old EverQuest books. This was a MMO. It's still on. It's actually still alive. And MMO, EverQuest, like many MMOs, used mana. And I've seen a lot of people talk about spell point systems in Pathfinder 2 and kind of getting rid of Vancian magic and moving to a spell point system or a mana system. And it got me wondering. I was like, I think you could do that in Pathfinder 2. I think there's a way to do it. And I think it's actually the reason, and this is actually, believe it or not, a segue, and I want to talk about this because I saw we had a couple questions from some folks. Nightish asked how our 5e game is going, and so is Gabe. And the reason this brings up is because I've kind of come to a conclusion recently that what makes for me what makes a game interesting is resources and understanding. Like, resources become an abstraction for understanding how our characters and the world around us and the narrative all interact to each other, but we do it in a way that makes sure that everybody can understand what's going on. We're all familiar with hit points, right? The concept of how alive I am could mean a million different things. And there's a million different ways you could track it. Individual wounds on your body, how many legs are broken, how many bruises. But we abstract all that, right, into a single number that we call hit points. And it's a language that we all understand. It's an inherent tension mechanic because...
Combat Medic $25.
CMB is here with a big $25 tip. Thanks, Combat Medic Bush. We have not had a chance to jam or catch up on the Discord for a while, but I do appreciate when you step in here and drop big tips. Thank you for everything that you do, Combat Medic Bush, active military, and well, we respect the hell out of him, and he's also a really great friend of the show. Glad to see you, buddy. Thank you. You know we love it when you're here. Well, now I feel super old Nightish. John, you got attacked, buddy. Combat Medic Bush came in with a big $25 tip. Tips deal double damage. I'm sorry to say. I will say though, you can heal yourself as long as you tip or super chat with the exact same name. If anybody tips with the name, with John Bonanza, it'll heal you, by the way. So we're still trying to figure this out. I might have to write an API and maybe to make my own bot to read the chat to be able to do things. But I want the hype boss to get powers. You know what I'm saying? We'll get to this. Okay, we have some other things that we need to talk about. We'll talk about everything tonight. But that's the problem with you and I, with all the rest of us, right? You know this. We always have way too much to talk about. If you're a member of our Patreon and you've come back after 2 days and you've seen the number of unread messages, you know that there's way, way, way too much to talk about. So basically, in our Five Torches Deep game, number one, it's going really, really well. Is it 5e? In the strictest of senses, yes. In the sense that we are using the 5e classes, but I have already, made modifications to them, and they're only level 1 and 2. I've already made up magical items, created new standard items out of, whole cloth out of nothing. And we have so many variant rules, most of which are taken from Five Torches Deep, to be fair. But really the game is like some percentage Torchbearer, some percentage Dungeon World, a good chunk Five Torches Deep, a small chunk 5th edition, and then a little bit of Derek thrown in there. But I'll say this, outside of any of that, we're playing in person. We've got a bunch of people. We are playing no miniatures. We are playing no maps. We are playing just,
Tip $10.
Hey!
Any behind-the-scenes info you can give on Northern Reaches? What don't the players see? What do the overlords do? What does Bob do with all those after-action reports?
Yeah, Boothby, we can talk about that. Thank you for the tip, and that's a fantastic. But yeah, so we're playing, and even outside, even Five Torches Deep doesn't do this. I do this. I'm using group initiative, a la basic D&D. So at the start of every round, I go around and I have everybody declare what they're doing. Are they going to engage and attack? Are they going to attack the people near them? Are they going to cast a spell? Are they going to shoot a bow? Like real quick, like, are they basically magic, melee, movement, or ranged? And we go around, do. Everybody's locked in. The combat leader or whoever's leading the expedition, they roll a d6. I roll a d6. And whoever gets higher, that side operates first. If we roll at the same time, everybody just goes simultaneously. We kind of just do it crazily, shooting back and forth. People are falling. People are dying. It's nonsense. If what you wanted to do doesn't happen and you want to do something else, we might say no. We might say you have to make a check. We might say you roll at disadvantage. We're just kind of all over the place. But it's fast. We haven't opened up or looked in a book once. I'm probably getting half of 5th edition's rules wrong. Quite frankly, I don't care. I think the only thing we actually looked up is what the sleep spell does. But, we are getting through, they fought an ogre and a trap and an ambush from goblins and another attack with goblins. They investigated like 4 or 5 different rooms. They ransacked the ogre's treasury. They went to a collapsed tunnel that the goblins had collapsed. They dug through that. They sent the halfling ranger in to scout. He found some strange ancient temple with a jade statue with ruby eyes. They cleaned it out. They tried to approach in. It summoned a shadow. They tried to defeat the shadow. They didn't have a way to defeat the shadow. Bob used his hammer and smashed the statue.
$35. I cast Heal Heighten to 15th level.
Art of Game Mastery coming in with a $35 tip. I don't know. Was that was that supposed to be John? I'm not sure what happened. He says heal. Did he kill himself? What's going on? Well, thank you for that tip. We'll get in chat what happened. We'll figure out what happened. But Art of Game Mastery, thank you very much. He Londoned himself. I could fix it manually if we need to, but I want to make sure that that's what's going on. Okay, John says shit. It used your like YouTube name or something, buddy. It's okay. Hold on a sec. Let me see if I can change this. Making it difficult for me. I don't know if I can. John says wrong account. He slams up. Well, you know what? Art of Game Master, we know it's you. We know it's still John, so he did it. He did it himself. But I appreciate it, John. We'll keep you alive. The Art of Game Mastery is a great name. But he did London himself. But anyways, we did all of that in a 4-hour session while totally shooting the shit and totally hanging out. Very, 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 just old school fun. We're making maps. We're drawing maps. They kept, they kept pushing and pushing and pushing themselves because they wanted more and more treasure, because they were into the super bonus. I think by the end of the session, they were getting 150 or 160% bonus XP. For every XP they earned, they were getting 160% bonus. Smith wanted to try to fight the shadow or somehow get away with the statue because he said that would have been worth an extra level. He wasn't wrong. Bob smashed the shadow. It destroyed without really knowing what it was going to do, but it ended up dissipating the undead specter, the shadow, and they were able to fall. But then, basically completely tapped out. They headed back to town. They leveled up to level 2. It was really good. Oh my gosh!
Overlord Forum tipped $100. Greetings, fellow knights. I've been out a while. Need to catch up.
Oh, Overlord is back, baby. What is up with our favorite role-playing game player from down south? The man with the keep, the castle, the man himself.
I am strong.
That's right. Smog says so. Overlord, good to see you, buddy. Thank you for that extremely generous tip. You know, John tipped $100 last time. Overlord tipped $100 this time. You guys are being really, really, really gracious and generous, and we love it. We appreciate it. For those of you who don't know, Overlord has quite possibly the coolest. He has a role-playing game house. We'll just call it that. He has a role-playing game house that he built on his own property. It's incredible. It literally changed the direction of people's lives, and basically is the reason why we want to do NightCon at some time in the future. Great to see you, buddy. Love to have you. Love to have you on more. Love to see you in the Discord more. You know, feel free. I know you're always out there playing games, but thank you very much. Well, John, you don't have to feel as bad. You healed yourself, but Overlord came in and would have slain you anyways. But thanks for that, both John and Overlord, for those great tips. And Boothby in there too. We got to get back to Boothby's question. All right. So yeah, it's been really fun, and we've been really enjoying Five Torches Deep. I don't know what to call it. It's not really Five Torches Deep. We've kind of changed it up. But what it comes down to, though, is resources. And for those of you who don't know, we have a system in our... what up? Welcome to Adventurer Ryan Dale. He is here, feeling strong. Welcome, Ryan. Enjoy those emotes. Enjoy that loyalty badge. Thank you very much for joining the adventure. Love to see it. Love to have another adventurer join on. If you want to be an adventurer too, click. There's a button below this that says join. That'll give you access to custom emotes, emojis, as well as a special community section on YouTube that we post to on occasion. And, you know, we're trying to grow that out. It's really a vanity play just to make sure that you can have your fun emojis and emotes and support us. But it is appreciated if you do that. Yeah, Five Torches Derek, Five Torches Deep. Right now, as a joke, we are calling it Dungeon Time Extreme. But that's just kind of a joking name. But what I use, and I've talked about this a little bit, in that adventure, or in that system, is, and we're still playing around with this, but I use two stats based on your constitution, based on your wisdom. One is called willpower, one is called resilience. And these are like a resource that goes down as the party adventures. And I can attack them. I can use them as a penalty for the party failing or having a bad idea. And I can reward them for the party having a good idea. And being able to play with resources lets the players understand intrinsically what is the bonus or what is the penalty for an action. So for example, if they say, hey, we want to try to dig out this tunnel. I say, you can absolutely do that, but keep in mind, you're going to make an athletics check. And if you make that athletics check, you'll be fine. You'll dig through it. But if you fail the athletics check, you'll still dig through it, because how do you fail that? But it'll tire you. And you're going to take 1d3 points of resilience damage. And resilience is how the martial characters power their abilities. And it's how every character recovers hit dice in 5th edition. We got rid of level-based hit dice. In fact, the hit dice mechanic from 5th edition is completely gone. But instead, you can, every time you complete a short rest, you can spend 1 resilience to recover 1 hit die worth of hit points. So you could have a 14 con, you have 14 resilience. But resilience does not go back up. Willpower does not go back up until you head back to town. And heading back to town is great. You get to spend your gold. You get to buy new items. You get to equip things, train things, change things about your character using the gold that you got. You get to level up. But all that bonus XP resets back down to 0%. So that means when you go back to the dungeon, when you go back to the adventure site, now you're just earning normal experience points. So the longer you can stay out in the danger, out in the shit, the higher your bonus experience points will get. This means that the party has a very natural, great press your luck tension mechanic where they get to a point where they're at 150% bonus XP. Now keep in mind, you don't get any of the experience points until you get back to town. But they're sitting at 150% bonus experience. But like every time we get 1 XP, we actually get 2.5 XP. If we keep getting XP, that could go to 200% bonus XP. But then you look around at your resources and you say, we're starting to roll low on willpower. People are getting drained. They're stressed out. They're strifed out. Our resilience is starting to drop off. People are getting tired. They're exhausted. So these resources provide a cool way for the players to manage and judge their expectations. Now, to be clear, this is this is very much a situation where this works for a dungeon game. I don't know that this would work for a different type of game. If you think about our Rise of the Runelords game, I used a very different system there. These guys were action-packed, kick in the door, Bruce Willis, Die Hard, Arnold Schwarzenegger action heroes. I wanted Rambos and Terminators, not these kind of scrappy, grungy adventurers. And so I had a very different set of rules for that type of game. We were using Pathfinder 2. I had my superhero point rules. I let them recover hit points in the middle of a fight by using Resolve. That was all to create a different type of game. The system and the rules that you use really do inform the type of game that you're gonna, that you're gonna be experiencing. So yeah, I'm really enjoying Five Torches Deep and having a lot of fun. Let's see. I did miss this thing from earlier when Philip, when Combat Medic Bush let us off. He said, "I didn't mean to hurt anybody." That's all right, buddy. You're not the only person. You're not hurting anybody. The only person you're helping is the nice last call, and we appreciate the hell out of it. Okay. So let me see here. What is going on here? There we go. Okay. Boothby had tipped earlier. And he said, any behind-the-scenes info that you can give on Northern Reaches? What don't the players see? What do the overlords do? What does Bob do with all those after-action reports? Yeah, so let me kind of walk you through this. And then I see CN has a question. We'll get to that in a second. So Northern Reaches, overlords, what we are looking to do in the after-action reports is, number one, we are looking to make sure that everything checks out, that everybody crossed their T's, dotted their I's, that, we don't think people are going to cheat, but, part of our job is to make sure that the game maintains a certain amount of integrity. But the other thing that we're really doing on a week-to-week basis is we are looking at what is going on in those adventures. What were the parties setting out to do? What were the new threats, new challenges that the game masters introduced? What are the unexpected or emergent results of those adventures? What zone did it occur in? What level were they? What did they win? Did they kill a monster? Did they encounter a new monster but it got away? Did they fight something and they fled? So we're taking all this information and we're thinking about it in terms of ticks on clocks or new clocks. We're also trying to judge a certain amount of sense of what is the North, what are the Northern Reaches community? What are they really interested in right now? What are the things that we think would provide an interesting tension? We talked about this before, resources. The Northern Reaches only have a certain amount of resources, which is how many adventures can you go on? How many, days per week can you play? How many characters do you have? And so we understand that, for me, part of the interesting job of a game master is to give you two things that you want and say choose. Not just to give you what you want, but to, you have to make a decision. It's not necessarily a painful decision. It's not like, you either get this or you become punished. You either get rewarded. It's not always stick and carrot. Sometimes it's just carrot and carrot. What do you want? And we love to introduce things that are going to make the community get excited and want to go out and adventure. Part of Northern Reaches is to sort of replicate this Western Marches old school approach where the community as a whole has to come together to achieve these goals. And we want players who are playing who see their adventure and suddenly, they encountered some creature, some spider, and suddenly that spider has feasted on the blood from another adventure, and suddenly this spider is now this like raid boss in the community. We want people who were there to go, oh man, that was kind of my fault. That was kind of our doing. I kind of did that. And we want people to feel like they are affecting and shaping the world. So when we look at what the group and community do, we try to take a look at what were their goals in the adventure? Did they accomplish them? Were those goals aligned to any existing clocks? And if they did succeed or fail, how many ticks, positive or negative, do we think that is worth on that clock? Again, depending on what level they are, what was the length of was it a monster hunt, or was it a delve, or was it a dungeon? And then if new threats were introduced, we don't want to overwhelm everybody. Sometimes we have to kind of weigh things. If a new threat or a new idea was created and we think it has some interest and merit, and we think that this is something that the community would really buy into, then we take a step back and we say, okay, we're going to create a new clock, or we're going to create a new offering. We're going to create a new opportunity for the group. But really what the overlords are doing, Boothby, is reading your after action reports. We have a special thread where each week we take the Game Master AAR summaries, and we basically copy and paste them all. So we read through, Bob is reading through like every single player's AAR, but like we'll get together and we'll look at all 12 or all 14 adventures that occurred that week. We'll look at what happened, what threats were being addressed, what new threats emerged, what zone did it occur in, what level range they were going into. And then we each kind of get together with a recommendation for what clocks we think should be ticked what, if new clocks or new opportunities or new threats should be generated for the reaches. And then if we disagree, sometimes it's like, yeah, I think that should be, +2 for the lumberjacks. I agree. +2 for the lumberjacks. Okay. Smith, +2 for the lumberjacks. Yeah. +2 for the lumberjacks. Boom. +2 for the lumberjacks. Other times it's a little bit more of a debate, and we try to make a good sense of it. Obviously, Smith and Bob have their, ear much closer to the ground. Bob is running these damn games most weeks. And so I defer to their expertise and to their knowledge about the realm. But, sometimes I have my prerogative and I'll come in there and I'll mix things up. So really, that's kind of what we're doing. We're also kind of, as a meta level, we are also trying to looking at how many games, were people getting in games, what time zones, make sure that everything's being managed from that perspective. So potentially going forward in the future, we might even have players, if they're completely willing to, it's like becoming a vampire. If you're completely willing to shed your player mortality and be forevermore just a game master, maybe eventually, and maybe for season 2, having some player overlords, Patreon member overlords, people who are really more interested in running the game and overseeing it than ever playing it. Because once you become an overlord, you cannot play in any zone because you have info on everything, and you just have too much power. So yeah, that's what's going on with that. So so I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody here. Ryan became an adventurer. John, aka the Art of Adventure, tipped a bunch of money. Combat Medic Bush tipped us. Boothby gave us some money, and then Overlord Ferome came in with a big $100. So, gosh, you guys are so awesome. We understand we're very lucky that I get to pay my friends and the people around me that are helping me run this. I get to give them money. I don't just have to pay them in thanks buddies. Being able to share the wealth with this group, and being able, like, every month we give away a $50 RPG product on our Discord. Every quarter we give away an additional $50. So like those months we're giving away $100 worth of RPG product. At the end of the year, we're having a massive giveaway for a bunch of stuff. I think the grand prize might be a hardcover copy of every single Pathfinder 2 book. And I'm even going to be custom building someone a table, a game table, like a Wormwood style, whatever kind of game table you want. Someone on our Discord is going to win that. And the reason I can afford to do that, and the reason why I can do that, is because of you, because of our patrons, because of the people who donate and tip. It all adds up. I am very blessed to have a full-time job, that, pays my bills and takes care of my things. So for me, the money that comes into this community, it's great and I love it. And it'd be really awesome to, be able to pay myself something out of it someday. But for the most part, I just take it and I put it right back into the games, into the community. I think by the end of this season, I think we're going to have something like 4 or 5 different Forge servers. We'll have something like 15 or 16 Foundry licenses. So just, we have a tremendous infrastructure that we're able to build up to allow our community to play games. And that's really what we all just are interested in. So, all right. Let's see. I'm sorry if I missed any questions or anything like that, but remind me if I missed your question. Remember to use that question. Put it there. Sienna asks, how does the bonus percentage tick up at milestones when they gain a certain amount of XP? When they gain a certain amount of XP. So the way that works is, at least at level 1. Now, I was using a different XP chart. The way that my XP chart worked, and I'll put this in the chat, is like it's 2,500, 5,000, 10,000, etc. So it doubles. So it's 2,500 for 2. It's 5,000 for 3. Hey, it's our favorite Aussie, and a monthly zine. That's correct. I completely forgot about that. Last month we published Battlecry issue 1, and we're able to put the time and effort into doing that. And it was like 16, 18 pages. But we want to do more with that. We want to bring in people. We want to pay people money to help write awesome content for us, because the people who are members of our Discord, they think like us. They're doing stuff like this. Oh my God, Derek, if the zine dies because you forgot to tell people about it, I'll never forget. I'm sorry. Look, I'm not a marketer. Okay. You should have seen me when I owned a photography business. It was terrible. People would call me up and they would say, hey, I really want to get some new headshots for LinkedIn and my dating profile, and maybe just some because I'm super vain. And what do you think of my current headshot? And I would go, yeah, it looks fine. I don't think you need anything new. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. And then they hang up the phone. I'm really bad at this, people. I'm really, really bad at this. I promise you, I'm horrible at this. Anyways, going back to the XP. So the way it worked at level 1 is, now keep in mind, that's 2,500. This isn't Pathfinder 2 experience. So that means if 4 people wanted to level to 2, they would need to get 10,000 experience points, right? Because the 10,000 experience points is divided amongst the 4 people. But they get treasure for XP, or they get XP for treasure. So if they find a 1,000 gold amulet, a 1,000 gold bracelet, that is worth 1,000 experience points once they get it back to town. But every time they acquire 500 XP, the next 500 XP is at 10% bonus. After they acquire that 500 XP, the next 500 XP is at 20% bonus. And then 30, and then 40, and then 50, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. So, that's the way it works. We may end up having to tweak the numbers to get a feel for it and make sure it's right. But my just estimation from doing this for a very, very long time is it felt competitive enough to really encourage and reward the party for trying to get big treasures and big loot. And by the way, I know I'm harping on this for a long time, but what this does is this creates an interesting intersection, again, of tension between what the players want and what the players are capable of doing, and can create some sort of press your luck mechanics. What is Derek talking about? What I mean is, let's say that there is some big room where there's some big monster that is probably worth a good chunk of experience points because he's high level and has a lot of hit dice. But even better, maybe that monster, let's say it's like a dragon, right? But even better, that dragon is sitting on a hoard. And that hoard is, 10,000 gold. So 10,000 experience points. So the party goes, that's a dragon. That's a really tough fight. We should go and fight that thing right when we first arrive at the dungeon, okay? Right when I get there, we're full up. We have all of our spells, all of our resources. Okay? And they could do that. Again, this is not about limiting options. It's about giving players choices. It's about giving texture to the choices. So the players go, we should go fight the dragon. We're at full hit points, full resources, full spells. Now is the time. But then there's another part of your brain, another part of the player's brain, at least my players, that goes, wait a second. What if we go and adventure first, and we go get into a little fight over there, and we go and try and get that treasure over there, and we go into those caves that we haven't been into, and we acquire a little bit of treasure, and 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 get our experience point bonus up really high to like 100% or 120%, or maybe even 200% bonus experience points. And then when we've spent a bunch of our resources and we've spent a bunch of our spells, we'll go fight the dragon and we'll try to claim its treasure, because now we'll get a massive amount of bonus. Hey, I don't have any skin in this game. They can go do whatever they want. If they go and die, it doesn't fuck up my game. My game, that is my game, is the players going, we can go fight the dragon when we're at full power and raffle stomp it, maybe, and certainly have an easier time with it when we're at full resources, and we'll get our 10,000 gold and we'll get our 10,000 experience points. No problems. Or we could go really get into a lot of trouble, rank up a bunch of bonus XP values, then go fight the dragon when we're low on resources, but we're at 200% bonus experience points. And now when we claim its 10,000 GP treasure, it's worth 30,000 experience points. That is a choice I'm giving to the players. It's allowing them to make textured decisions. It's allowing them to decide to push their luck. But even better, it is allowing them to be rewarded for their skill. Yes, their skill. Because if you take two groups, and Group A goes and they, fight some monsters and explore some caves and gather some treasures, and they get up to 200% bonus experience points, but they basically are tapped out. They've used up all their resources, all their potions, all their scrolls, all their spells, all their hit points. They are basically at 200% experience points, 200% bonus experience points, but they are tapped out. Well, they could go fight the dragon, but it's going to be really, really risky. And they might not make it, or they might decide, guys, this was too tough. We got to go back to town. We can't take the dragon, not in this state. But then you have a different group, a group that plays smarter, a group that plays better. It's D&D, maybe a group that got luckier too, but over that long a period of time, probably is because of their skill. And now, when that group, that second group, when they get to 200% bonus experience points, because they stole this treasure and they didn't fight a single thing. They used illusionary spells to get the orcs to leave the cave, and then they stole all their treasure while they were out. Another set of example, they fought a group of hobgoblins, but it was an ambush. There was a surprise round. It was brutal. The hobgoblins were dead before they even knew what hit them. No one lost anything. And now when that group, that second group, gets to 200% bonus experience points, they're almost full up. They have most of their spells. They have most of their resources and most of their abilities. A lot of their magical items are still unspent. Now that group can go fight the dragon at 200% bonus experience points and have a reasonable chance of success, because they played smarter, they played better during the course of the adventuring day. And so when they got to 200% bonus experience points, they had a lot more resources. They had a lot more ability to go fight the dragon. So that is why I really like that system, and why it's very interesting to me. Yeah. Let me see here. Pierre asked a question, which we'll get to. I'll get to that in a second. I just want to catch up here. Overlord says he thought the zine was awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Even self-confessed cynic zine like the zine, and he barely likes anything, although he did roast the formatting. 100% fair. Right now, the formatting is basically just a style sheet. We are going to eventually start using InDesign and move in there. Nightish says, y'all be gambling with your fake characters' lives. Absolutely. Absolutely. I've always said this. Aaron says this. I say this. D&D is like the fun of gambling, but without the risk of ruin that comes with gambling, right? Where you could literally lose all your money and be really, up shit creek without a paddle. But, D&D, I've said this a million times. Play your characters like like they're stolen cars. Doesn't matter if you ruin them, and quite frankly, you're not going to get to keep them. So you might as well, push it to the limit and have fun with it. That being said, there's also a certain amount of satisfaction and fun that comes from playing smart and getting rewarded. And a lot of RPGs, you could play smart and, wow, we really owned that fight. We didn't lose a lot of spells. We didn't lose a lot of hit points. And it might not actually matter, because you might look at another group that really struggle bust through that fight, and they did use a lot of resources. But because of the way the mechanics of the game work, or the pacing of the adventure module is written, they end up being at the same full XP or full hit points and full spells by the time of the next fight anyways. And maybe it's milestone-based experience points. So it doesn't matter whether you lost all of your resources or only some of your resources. If you make it to the Mountains of Morn, everybody levels up. So again, that might be good for a certain style of play. But when I'm playing a game that's based off of something called Dungeons and Dragons, and we're using a hack of that called 5 Torches Deep, I am trying to promote a certain type of atmosphere, a certain type of player incentives. And I do that through the mechanics and the reward mechanics especially. And as I've said before, what gets measured gets managed, what gets rewarded gets repeated. And I want to encourage a certain type of play. I do that by creating mechanics and reward mechanics that push the players towards it without me having to actually make anybody do it. If they are self-motivated by these things, then they will do that naturally. Now, if the party doesn't care at all about that stuff, and they're like, your reward mechanics don't matter, none of this interests me, well, then that's a fundamental miscommunication between myself, my players, and the game. Maybe I should have brought a different game to the table. Maybe my players should have thought twice before they came to play. So that's like a separate issue. But if we are trying to do this type of game, I definitely want to create, based incentives to do that. I'm running my first dungeon for the Northern Reaches. Any advice for a first-time major dungeon runner? Yeah, I would think, okay, the best option, the best choices are, or the best advice I can give you is, make sure that the party has different options. Make sure that, and give them the information they need to make decisions. Do we want to go right and fight the orcs, which might be an easier fight, but maybe there's a group of them? Or do we want to go left and fight the undead, which could be a tougher fight, but it's less likely to get out of control? Respond and react. Dungeons are fun because you don't have an end goal. It's a site to be explored. It's a playground. It's a sandbox, a place where the party can just go in there, get dirty, have fun. There is no agenda. You're not trying to get them to do something. Let them do it. But make sure you are generous with the information, and make sure that it's far better for your players to know too much than for your players to not know enough. That being said, Night School, a lot of those choices things comes down to the way you design your dungeon. It's very tempting to want to design your dungeons in a very, very linear path where you are essentially shepherding them and sort of corralling them towards certain locations that you want them to go. My recommendation is to avoid that. But at the same time, don't just create a random maze and the party is just basically rolling a die to determine if they go left or right. Make sure that there is an overabundance of information. Make sure you're giving them choices. Hey guys, there's a tougher fight over here, but it's got a really cool treasure. Hey, there's a bunch of easy fights down this way, which will get you to another section of the dungeon, but it could take a lot of your time. Low risk, low reward. Play with the levers that the party wants and make sure that they have those options. Because if they don't want to fight tough things, that they can go fight the easy things. But let them know what they're missing out on. Make sure that they are empowered to make good decisions. And that starts with solid knowledge. What else? Vary the threats. Don't have everything just be a severe or extreme. Have some things be moderate. Make sure that they don't have to fight everything. use traps and hazards and, make the dungeon a fun environment. It's okay to have creatures that talk to the party and that definitely have a problem with the, other creatures, and maybe they need help. Politics, intrigue, diplomacy, these things can happen in a dungeon. And again, it comes down to resource. Make sure that there's some element of time pressure. Now, the classic example of this is to use random encounters. If the party goes, hey, we're going to heal up to full after every fight. Well, if there's monsters in the dungeon that are reacting and are traveling around and potentially encountering the party, then that is not as much of an option. That's a great option, as was talked about in the recent Battlecry magazine. But there are other options too, things that I have thought about encouraging, especially in the context of Northern Reaches. Imagine if the party goes into a dungeon, and I'm just kind of spitballing here. Imagine they take a side passage and they find a shrine, a long forgotten shrine to, say, a god of good or goddess of good. Maybe they make a check to try to re-sanctify this, and it comes to life, and a blessing of energy flows through every character. And you give every character heroism level 6, a +2 status bonus to all D20 rolls. That's huge in Pathfinder 2, especially at the levels that we're playing. But that energy, came with the dedication to the shrine. It's not a renewable resource. And that energy, forget heroism's 10-minute duration, but that energy only lasts one in-game hour, 60 minutes. Suddenly the party goes, we really want to maximize this bonus. Oh, yeah, we just got into a fight. It was awesome because we had heroism +2. It was awesome. Okay, I'm going to treat wounds. We'll treat wounds. We'll spam focus. Whoa. Guys, that'll take like 30 or 40 minutes. Are we sure we need to do that? We really want to maximize what this heroism spell is worth. If we're just sitting here throwing our hit points away callously in a fight, just because we're going to spend 30 or 40 or 50 minutes after the fight healing back to full, we're just going to burn out this awesome buff on like one fight. Screw that. I want to really tap this. I want to get the biggest bang for my buck. So in this way, you are using a carrot instead of a stick to encourage time pressure. You're using the player's own power, gamey, greed, munchkiny behavior against themselves in order to push them into making it tougher for themselves, because they want to be able to maximize the gains that they would get from the buff otherwise. Now, some players might not care. They might say, I'm fine with it. I just want to heal to full, and that's fine. That's fine too, because either way, they made a decision, and it was their decision to make. But I definitely think that having some element of time pressure can be important. And it doesn't have to be a plot time pressure. That's one of the most common things to use. I try to avoid that, especially in a dungeon, whenever possible. All right, moving through. Overlord claims the Overlord title. Honestly, I can't believe that no one else has claimed it either, but it is yours now for all time. Question. With the one session and varying group composition limits, how do you do bigger conflicts between factions in the dungeon? Well, strategy. My vision for Northern Reaches has played out a little differently than I expected it to. So let me give you an example. In our last 5 Torches Deep Derek and Dragons or whatever game, the group discovered in the Goblin Caves a secret door that led into the Ogre's Cave. And if you've played B2, Keep on the Borderland, Caves of Chaos, these are all classic monsters. And the Ogre is a bit of a mercenary. He could be paid off by some of the tribes of humanoids to fight other tribes of humanoids. Well, I rolled randomly to see if he was home. He was not. The group went in there and they ransacked him dry. They robbed him blind. They took all of his money. They actually missed some magical items, but they got all his money. and they decided, okay, let's get out of here. So they went back. They retreated to their camp, not to town, but to camp, because they didn't want to reset their bonus. And so I sat there and I said, okay, what are the odds that the ogre's going to be pissed? Someone stole his goods. Does he go and find the party? So I made a random encounter check to see if the ogre would track them down. But I rolled low. So the ogre did not go and track them down. It wasn't that he couldn't find them. It's that he didn't track them down. So I was like, well, he has to think somebody stole it. So I rolled on the ogre's reaction table, and I got that he was hostile. And then I rolled on the goblin's table, and I got they were hostile. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. The ogre thinks, this is all me behind my screen. I go, before the party, I didn't tell any of this to the party. I go, I'm going to rule, based off of these reaction rolls and the random encounter roll, that the ogre thinks the goblins stole his money, that they've been beefing. Maybe they were mad at him about a job that he got paid to do, but he didn't do. And so the ogre thinks they double-crossed him and they stole his money. So the ogre's going to go in there. He's going to wreck face. He's going to kill all these goblins, the ones that were left that the party hadn't killed. And the goblins, being weakened, weren't able to put up maybe as a whole tribe could have stopped the ogre. But the party had killed so many of the goblins, they were very much weakened. And so the ogre was able to go in and deal crushing amounts of damage and kill them all. So when the party came back the next day, they discovered that the goblin caves were filled with dead goblins. Blunt force trauma, whole bodies torn apart, partially eaten. The ogre had just savaged the tribe. And then they finally found the ogre picking through the Goblin King's treasure hoard. And he was kind of like, who are you, But he was hurt. He'd been fought an entire tribe of goblins. So the party smelled blood. And they were like, you know what? And the ogre himself was still pretty angry about it. And he started kind of putting two and two together that maybe the party was the ones who stole his money. And, but the ranger was like, hey, I already have a bow. I already have my arrow cocked. I'm ready to go. And I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, shoot him. He shot him. The party engaged very quickly. The ogre missed, and then he was dead because he had already been hurt. So the ogre actually had already been hurt. The goblins all got taken out. The party got all their treasure anyways. It was like a win-win-win-win. And it all kind of happened because of random numbers, because they decided to steal the ogre's treasure. My point is, Strat, when I envisioned Northern Reaches, I envisioned more dungeon masters, more game masters creating like a 15 or a 20 room dungeon and populating it, and then having a group come in and explore part of it, and maybe causing some problems in one area and dealing with a threat in another area, and then leaving and bringing that word to the other people in the Northern Reaches. The coolest example of this, in my opinion, the best thing that ever happened in Northern Reaches, and I'm gonna get some of this wrong. GM Scott is in the chat, so he can fill this in. We talked about this at length when we were at Origins Game Fair, hanging out with GM Scott. But GM Scott had adventured very early on in Northern Reaches, and he had adventured in Bob's original dungeon. And GM Scott had acquired this ruby, which was worth a lot of money, especially for a level 1 character in Pathfinder 2, but decided not to sell it and just kept it. Well, it turned out many, many, many weeks later, as the group was getting ready to go against back to the temple and unlock the massive treasure hoard and not deal with any of the major issues, that gem was part of a set that helps you unlock the unlock the treasure hoard and deal with the automated defenders. GM Scott had no idea that this was at the time. He just thought it was a cool ruby, decided to keep it. The party came to GM Scott and was like, can we give you a cut? We want that ruby. Will you sell it to us? Can we borrow it? Can we give you a percentage of the treasure that we're about to restore? They had to like wheel and deal with GM Scott. Now, luckily, GM Scott, I think, was a champion and he was good. So he was like, he wasn't going to rake him over the coals for it. But point was, GM Scott had this information, he had this knowledge, he had this item that another party needed or wanted. So for example, let's say you build a dungeon and a party goes into it. I'm making this very, very simplistic. The party goes into a dungeon, they're exploring one part of it, there's an undead section, there's a tomb, they find a treasure, and in this treasure they find this sapphire key. It's a key made out of pure sapphire, and they're like, holy shit, that's awesome. And you're like, how much is it worth? You're like, 300 gold. And the party's like, oh man, we sell it. Okay. A different group goes into your dungeon, maybe later that same week or a different week. They go a different direction. And at the back of the dungeon, they find a door seemingly carved out of pure sapphire, but with an immensely complex and intricate lock set in the middle of it. Now, maybe that group sold the key. Maybe someone else bought it in Northport, and now you can go buy the key from anybody, but it's like 1,000 gold because someone's like, oh, I know how much this is worth. Maybe that group didn't sell the key. They held on to the key. Maybe you need to have that person join your party with you to go get it. Maybe you need to bribe them. Maybe you need to deal with them. Maybe they have information. Maybe they learn in their adventure that there's a big threat of goblins in the other part of the dungeon. And maybe that group comes back and they don't know that another group came in there and killed all those goblins. And so they come in expecting a bunch of goblins, and instead it's all goblin corpses. Oh, but guess what? They've all raised as zombies and skeletons and ghouls, and now it's a whole different thing. And they're like, we weren't prepared for this. My point is, I originally expected people to create dungeons. The way I envisioned Northern Reaches, now again, the players, I'm not complaining. The players took it, they made it their own. But the way I expected it to go was that the reason why a 4-hour session is called a delve and a 6-hour session is called a dungeon is because the idea was a delve was like, you're going to an adventure site, but you're not like doing the whole thing, right? You're just getting in there, you're doing a couple rooms, you're exploring a little bit, and then you're getting out. A dungeon, which was 6 hours plus, was more like a hardcore exploration into a dungeon. You're going to clear out a good percentage chunk of it. And then monster hunts, which were 2 hours, were just designed for people who said, look, I don't have the time or the energy or the skill to make these. These monster hunts were supposed to be the exception, not the rule. And monster hunts were supposed to just literally be a monster hunt. Pick one monster from the bestiary or make up your own that's like, maybe it's causing problems in one of the zones, and the party goes and fights it, and it takes about an hour to get through the fight, and that's it. It's like a training wheels / I don't have a lot of time, I don't want to commit to 4, 6, or 7 hours, but I expected most of the game to be delves and dungeons, 4 and 6 hour plus sessions in a GM's dungeon that they create, and they create it with enough depth and complexity that multiple groups have to adventure there multiple times in order to clear through all of the content. It did not happen. Not that I'm complaining, but just saying that is kind of what I initially envisioned. So yes, keep the interaction simple, the effects clear and eminent. Although I guess this example definitely doesn't work with the effects clear and eminent. It becomes clear and eminent, right? Because part of the fun of Northern Reaches is this idea of the community picking up and listening and hearing rumors from what other people are telling them. Or maybe a group of adventurers, you and 3 people from the Northern Reaches, you go to the dungeon and you learn something about an unbelievable secret, about an incredible treasure hoard, but it's located on the 2nd level of this dungeon. Well, what do? Do you tell anybody about it? Or do you keep that information to yourself? And do you try to be like, hey, let's keep this between ourselves, right? Circle of trust, right? We'll all get together next week, and we'll try to go after it, right? And you're hoping that nobody else finds out, but maybe somebody squeals. Maybe they go, I'm going to go with another group, and I'm going to go get it before we all go get it. I mean, it's a little bit of double crossing betrayal, but I think that's okay. I think that's a little bit of fun, a little bit of pizzazz to the game. So yeah, I think that could be, that's visually how I envision the game going, but that is not exactly how it worked out, but that's okay. But maybe there are things that I could do, that we all could do in season 2 to sort of maybe push and promote that. Big part of Monster Hunts being successful was that people needed to get comfortable game mastering. With people on the server, with Foundry, with Forge, and I think we've done that. So now I think maybe we're in a better position to do that. So, all right. All right. Well, we've definitely trailed off in terms of viewers, so I guess that was really boring for people. Sorry. 1 D&D. 1 D&D is cool, and 1 D&D is awesome, and you should 1 D&D. 5 things that I hate about 1 D&D. 7 things I can't wait for 1 D&D. Let's see if the viewers just go back up now. yeah, keep the dungeon interaction simple. Don't try to make it overly complex. You're not writing the next great American novel. You're just, keeping it, make it easy. Easy is better than complex. Yeah, Ryan, should definitely check it out. It's very cool and it's very fun. And, everyone gets to start at level 3 right now. But the other thing about Northern Reaches, Ryan, is that in November, season 1 ends. And we go into the winter phase. There's no games in December. And when we start up again in January for season 2, which is 2023, the characters start over. So everybody starts again, back at the beginning. So even if you feel like, there's definitely a capacity to get in there. Again, you can go make a level 3 character right now because of the way they've leveled up the town. But if you're like, it's already so advanced, okay, wait till next season. And it's going to start over. And, it's like a fresh start. Not saying that you shouldn't go, kind of get your feet wet now, but, just in a couple months, it's going to be start from the fresh. Question. Would you have any interest in reading the first sort of story blurb from a homebrew that my group ran recently? Sure, Lurch. Add me on Discord. Come find us or whatever, or put a link or something. I don't know. I don't think it won't allow you to do links. So, did you play that Warhammer game yet? Oh, Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires? No, I have not. The night I was going to play that, I ended up playing Oath board game instead and lost really badly, but it was okay because it was an awesome game. So yeah, let's see. All right. That's correct, Ryan. Yep. You just go create a thread in the sign up channel and he'll get you onboarded, and then you get access, and then you can see what games are going on. You can make a character, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. That sounds great. So yeah, going back to what I was saying earlier, way at the beginning of the stream, I want, because we were talking about EverQuest and EverQuest had mana, I really want to see if I can make a mana system work for Pathfinder 2. I probably would have to rewrite most of the magic system in the game. I'm sorry to say. Maybe you could convert things, but I have an idea about how you could use mana as a resource that is probably not the way that most people would think about it when they just think about spell points. Bill, take care, buddy. Good to see you. Love it. Thanks for hanging out with us. Again, this is a chill stream, guys. It's chill. It's Labor Day weekend. I don't even think we have a lot of Northern Reaches games scheduled this weekend because everybody's going to be hanging out with their families and their friends and just kicking it. And that's the name of the game. We're going to be playing some D&D tomorrow. We were supposed to play Pathfinder 2 this week. It's supposed to be a really great week. Pathfinder 2 on Tuesday, some D&D / Derek D&D on Friday. It was going to be great, but question. How does one get more stuff done in a session, especially combat? Well, actually, stick and carrot, right? Actually, right in front of me, ironically, on my tabletop or on my desk are these. These are egg timers. I think this is a 2-minute one, and this is a 3-minute one. I actually bought these, believe it or not, for 4th edition D&D. And the way it used to work is at the start of your turn, I would flip this around, and if you could get your turn done...
Rick Sherman tipped $15.
Hey, Rick.
Hi, Derek. Just supporting the channel. Nice to see you have power again.
Thank you, Rick. I'm happy to have power again as well. It was quite a pain in the ass. I felt really bad, especially since we were supposed to be coming back that day. So appreciate the tip. Appreciate everybody trying to take down the Overlord. Yeah, we're gonna get that game going, and still trying to figure out how to get this root game going. I bit off way too much, way more than I could chew. Bob's been so insanely busy. I'm not blaming Bob, but Bob's been so busy. So the idea of having to do all this work to remodel everything at the studio on by myself has been a little daunting, and work's been pretty busy. So definitely need to get that going again. So we can get the root game launched. Yeah. So anyways, I used to sit there with this egg timer, and if a person could get their whole turn done in 3 minutes, I would essentially give them not a hero point, but like I gave them like a +2 to their next turn's attack roll or something like that. I just encourage them to just be on the money. I mean, don't get me wrong. Games like Pathfinder 2 and 4th edition D&D by extension, tactical games with a lot of choices are inherently slower. Okay, are inherently slower because people are weighing all the decisions. That's part of signing up for this game. When someone complains about a game being too long or not getting enough done, it's also a way of saying this isn't as interesting to me. See, like if a baseball game goes long, but you really, really like baseball, that's a good thing for you because you're really enjoying the game. The people who complain about how long baseball games are, it's because they really don't like baseball. So if you find yourself constantly complaining about the length of combat and time and things like that, part of the problem might be that you are just not enjoying the thing that you were trying to do. The second thing is people wasting time. Part of a GM, people, you do need to, again, if everybody's having a great time, people come over Friday. If we spent the whole night talking about, I don't know, Game of Thrones or something, I wouldn't care. I love that stuff. And, but you got to keep people on task. You got to keep people moving. You have to make sure that people are paying attention, that they know what their turn's going to be, that they know how their character works, that they know how, these things work. If you watched Rise of the Rune Lords, you would know that sometimes I lost my cool a little bit as a GM because people wouldn't know how things on their character sheet worked. And it would upset me because I was saying, like, look, be respectful of other people's time, be respectful of my time, but be respectful of other people's time. And in our case, our audience's time. Know your damn character. I'm not expecting you to be an expert on the rules and to have memorized every single thing. But if you never know anything about how anything on your character works, we have a fundamental problem. You are obviously not engaged enough with this game to play it at a level that I would consider to be respectful to everybody else. There are simpler games that maybe you should be playing instead. But this is a game, Pathfinder 2, that requires a certain amount of mechanical game system skill and knowledge. And I don't think you're being a dick if you insist that people know how to play the game and know how to play their character. If it's a strange situation that never has come up before, that's fine, that's different. But if this is a feat that they have chosen for their character, it's one of 5 feats on their sheet, yeah, I expect them to know how it works pretty much exactly without them having to look it up every single time. So, yeah. I mean, maybe that's a little harsh, but if somebody doesn't know how their character works, it means they don't actually care and this isn't important to them, which is fine. It doesn't have to be important to you, but
GM Scott tipped $55.
Oh.
Keeping my players ready is like herding cats. I think they're getting better, but we've only played 54 sessions of PF2 so far. Oh yeah, and I fire an arrow of overlord slaying.
GM Scott comes in with the 6th snipe, takes down overlord. Wow, didn't think that was going to happen. Arrow slaying for sure. Those tips are dangerous, getting that sick doubling. Yeah, I mean, look, this is complicated because Lance says it's okay, they're new. As GM Scott said, it could be like herding cats, and I happen to know that GM Scott plays with his friends, and this is a group that there's other social factors involved. In fact, sometimes it's worse because if it's complete strangers, it could be difficult to kind of put pressure on people, and if they're your friends, it could be difficult to put pressure on people. It's usually people in the middle that you're like, this is a good acquaintance, so I feel comfortable enough to tell them what's up, but they're not such a good acquaintance that I don't want to risk losing them as a friend if they somehow take offense to this. Those are the people that are the easiest to deal with. But yeah, I mean, and as GM says, we're all old school players. We spend a lot of time BSing. It's hard for me to knuckle down. Look, it could be hard for me to knuckle down too. I'm having fun too. In fact, a lot of times my players have to check me. I'll sit there and bullshit for hours, and it's like, oh yeah, we got to play. That being said, you can bullshit for a long time in some systems and still get a lot done in just a few short hours. Whereas other games really do take and demand a lot of time. And if you want to get 3 or 4 or 5, major areas or encounters or whatever dealt with in one night, playing a game like Pathfinder 2, then you really have to knuckle down, and you really have to you have to be a little bit of a boss, kind of put on that authoritative GM role and be a sort of a leader and a project manager, as well as a game master. So that's that part of that hat. So, but thank you for the tip, GM Scott. And yes, I think everything that GM Scott is saying is correct, KC says, between Hot D and LTR, I'm very excited for some more fantasy media to steal interesting locations and plot hooks from. Whilst running out of lazy prep material to steal from. Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying Hot D a lot, and we'll see how I feel about Lord of the Rings. But hated the Hobbit movies, but I love Lord of the Rings movies, so go figure. Strat, my guess is what I would think of as a mana system, very different from what most games think of as a mana system. Not saying I won't check a look at Godbound. That's maybe not a bad idea, but that's, 4 or 5 Pathfinder Society games over 3 days is going to be exhausting. Yes. Yes, it would be. I'm not going to lie. That would be pretty exhausting. Pathfinder, whether you like the game or not, whether you love the game or not, you have to admit it is a very, it's a very high frequency game. It's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of math. By the end of our, when we were 15th level plus at the end of Dark of Winter campaign, where I was playing first a cleric and then a fighter, by the end of the night of a 5-hour session, just one 5-hour session, by the end of the night, I'd roll the D20 and see a 17 and then just and it's my second attack with man. I'm and I've got heroism on me, and maybe the creature's flanked, and maybe it's frightened. I don't remember. And I'm just sitting there do I have an 8? 17 plus 27 is 44. No, it's 54, 40, 54, 44. Did I include the map? Is it 49? I don't that would be me. It could wear you down. It could wear you down. 100%. If you're going to model a mana system from EQ, then you need to work out the mechanics for gems. You're not wrong, GM Scott. I'm going to go med for a couple hours. Go play gems. Strat says, the idea of mana is rapid, constantly refreshing. It doesn't go well with the mess that spells are. Some are fine to spam. Others are basically rituals of daily shape, and they want a daily limit. I got ideas, Strat. I got ideas. If I can come up with something, Battle Cry might be the perfect place to put it. So we'll see. Yeah. Ryan, I love playing PbtA. I love how fast it plays. One of our patrons, one of our big top patrons, Ben, just this past weekend, thought that they were going to be playing in someone else's Warhammer 40K game. That person canceled. And he said, well, all right, I'll GM it, but I don't know this system. So I'm going to make a hack of Warhammer 40,000 Space Marines, whatever. But I'm going to make a hack of it using Powered by the Apocalypse mechanics. Real simple, really straightforward. Boom, boom, boom. Here are 5 moves, 4 or 5 basic moves. Here's a couple playbooks. Each would have a couple abilities. Done, right? Let's go. And then he was telling somebody what he did. He's like, oh, the Space Marines took on this planet, and it was descended by orcs, and they had to fight their way to a position to link up to a ComSat relay to reestablish contact with an Imperial Guard unit to call down, Basilisk artillery, and then and then this and this, and someone's like, oh my God, how long did you play for? He was like, I don't know, 3 hours. And they were like, what? That all happened in 3 hours? It's like, yeah. Yeah, Powered by the Apocalypse can sometimes happen. It feels like at the speed of a movie, but you sacrifice something. What do you sacrifice? Complexity, depth, the power of a certain choice. Right? In Pathfinder 2, every decision you make has this sort of intricate math, web matrix that you are building. Some games, if you want to move quicker, you have to sacrifice some of that, and that's what ends up happening. What about if you have that one person in the group who plays the wizard who hasn't come up with what spells they might use? They picked the wrong class. That's all I'll say to that. Pierre says, I'm catching up. Thanks for the great ideas on running a dungeon. Also, Steven has been running an awesome dungeon and has definitely been the most fun I've had in Northern Region, which is why I'm making one. Yes, Pierre, I know this is probably not going to make sense to anybody, but if you're still listening, Pierre, yeah. What Vlax has been doing with the deep halls is A+ material in my book. Like, that is, again, it's the player's game. They can do whatever they want. The GMs have carte blanche to do whatever they need to do, and I'm okay with that. But what what Vlax has been doing with the deep halls in combination with Bob is really what I had hoped more people would do. So I'm really excited to hear that you, one, enjoyed it, and two, that you've been inspired to sort of run your own thing. So and Strat is agreeing with you. So awesome. Love it. Big time. What are your feelings on the way of Forbidden Realms' way of building up spell power by pushing rolls for a 1? In general, I like the push mechanic in Forbidden Realms. Or do you mean Forbidden Lands, GM Scott? I think you mean Forbidden Lands. I'm assuming you mean Forbidden Lands. Pushing is fun. I really like that mechanic. I don't like the way that you gain willpower in Forbidden Lands. I don't like I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to reward you for pushing yourself, and that's how you get willpower. I don't like that it creates this wonky mechanic where, like, now you have to police how often people push rolls and whether a roll should be pushable or not because they might be trying to farm for willpower. That is something I don't like, that interaction. But overall, I think the push mechanic as a way to sort of gamble on your spell power is a cool idea. And I mean, I like that mechanic even in Forbidden Lands in general. I just don't necessarily like how it ties to willpower, and that it could create some like munchkin-y behavior where someone's trying to push a roll to like gather food because they're trying to get more willpower out of it. It's kind of wonky. Self-confessed, and this is, yeah, jamming Pathfinder 2nd Edition taps me out after like 3 to 4 hours. I will say it's a lot easier on VTT because it's doing all the math and the heavy lifting for you for the most part. But, you know, it's a complex game. It's tough to play. Let's see. Question. Have you played with the stamina resolve system as yet? Yeah, Lurch Money, go take a look at our Rise of the Rune Lords actual play. We have 29, 30 episodes, I think. I don't remember how many exactly we had. Where the whole Pathfinder 2 game was played using stamina and resolve. So, and I gave everybody the steal yourself feat for free. So everybody could steal yourself automatically once per fight, or something like that, or whatever. But they could spend resolve in fights to regain stamina using the steal your resolve, but they didn't have to take that feat. But yes, I used it for our Rise of the Rune Lords game because I wanted a game where people were basically big ass, big damn heroes, action superstars, and I think stamina resolve definitely gives you that. Gotcha, GM Scott. Yes, Forbidden Lands. Yes, so I was talking about the right game. Yes, I like it. But I do think the way you can potentially gamify / munchkinify willpower milking is kind of shitty. SC Voldo coming in talking about EverQuest mana regeneration. Got to add those mana regen spells and magic item effects. Players will need their crack. Absolutely. All right. Well, it's about 8:20, and I think I finally caught up in the chat. Wow, usually I don't get caught up to the bottom of the chat till closer to 9 o'clock. But, you know, this is what happens when we only have 30 viewers instead of 40 or 45. But I kind of knew that because I didn't really put anything super compelling in the title. So for those of you who decided to hang out with us, you know, that is it's awesome anyways. But again, any questions, thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, I'll be happy to have them. If I missed something, feel free to repost it. Yeah, there was something I wanted to talk about. And it's more, I don't know, a rant is not the right term. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. I don't know where I put this thing. Okay. Got it. So this is Adventures in Orokugan. This is released by Edge Studios, who produces the Legend of the Five Rings game. And the Legend of the Five Rings game, ironically, is on its 5th edition. And if you've watched me and heard about this channel, you know that I think Legend of the Five Rings 5th edition is a really, really cool, unique game. It has some weird, strange, wonky dice. I thought I had some up there. It's a game of Legend of the Five Rings is a game of fantasy Japan. And it's a sort of, you know, the same way that, Dungeons and Dragons takes a lot of cues from medieval Europe with kings and knights and long swords and, full plate armor, all the things, horses, castles, the whole 9 yards, that we sort of take as European fantasy, and we've translated that into fantasy. Legend of the Five Rings is a fantasy version of Japan with certain other Asian cultural influences, but with its own sort of quasi-historical but unique fantasy setting, and some really great rules for playing high samurai drama. And to be clear, when I say high samurai drama, I mean like dealing with your heart's desire and your lord's will, and doing what is right versus doing what is expected of you. Sacrificing yourself for the greater good, or, doing something that will...
John Benotza tipped $25. Hey. I asked this in Discord for the monthly Q&A, but might as well ask it here since PbtA is more of a philosophy than a system. What would you say are the tenets of the philosophy? What makes up to PbtA?
Thank you for that tip, and GM Scott is slain, and John takes the ring. So John's question is, what makes a PbtA game PbtA? All right, my answer to that would be number one. Number one, you have 3 outcomes to a roll. Success with complications, failure, whatever you want to call it. 2, and this is my opinion, the difficulty of the task is not represented by a DC. In other words, it's represented in the fiction. It is represented in the narrative. It is represented in the consequences of the action. So, for example, in a PbtA game, if I want to go and attack the giant, I roll 2d6 and I add 3. And if I get a 7 or higher, I succeed. If I want to go and attack a starving goblin who is almost unconscious, I'm being facetious here because in PbtA you wouldn't make an attack roll for this, but if I want to go attack a lowly goblin guard, it's the same thing. It's 2d6 and add my stat, and if I get 7 or higher, it's the same. The game does not differentiate the difficulty of these things. The reason for that is because everything around difficulty and effect is handled inside the narrative. So what I mean is, as an example, let's say if you're fighting a giant, we're going to assume that your character is a reasonable hero of the realm, okay? A character who goes in and fights a goblin and, say, rolls a 6 and gets a failure, and thus, again, remember I said it's like you get success with a complication. So they're going to get a complication for this. Now, obviously, I had to make a decision that this was worthy of a roll, but let's just say, for instance, it was. The complication that hero gets for rolling a 6 or minus, 6 or lower on their attack, hack and slash or whatever against this goblin guard is going to be very different mechanically than the 6 minus, and narratively, than the 6 minus they get when they go to attack the giant. If you roll a 6 minus against the goblin, I might say, you try to finish the goblin with a quick thrust to end its life, but he manages to put up a surprising defense, unbelievably parrying a few of your blows. And before you know it, you find yourself drawn into a prolonged combat with this creature, and you thought you were going to kill him instantaneously, and instead it's taking you a couple minutes. I might even still say you kill the creature. It just took you longer than you thought. That might be the consequence. On the other hand, if you roll a 6 minus against a giant, I might say, he bats away your attack, and then he plants his foot, which is the size of your body, into you. You go sailing 50 feet, yards across the field, crash into a boulder, and break every rib in your body. Like, the level of discourse is not decided by DCs and specific damage values. We use the dice to just determine whether this is going to be good or bad. It doesn't tell us how good or how bad something is going to be. So to me, that is like the essential nature of PbtA. And that's why a game like Blades in the Dark, to me, is still kind of PbtA-ish, because ultimately there aren't DCs in the game. Even the challenging, controlled, risky, desperate of your position doesn't actually impact how the dice rolls work. If you get a 6, you get full success. If you get a 4 or 5, you get success with a complication. If you get a 1, 2, and 3, you get a complication. So that doesn't change whether it's a risky action, a controlled action, or a desperate action. What changes is the consequences of rolling a 1 through 3. And Blades in the Dark just does a more defined way of establishing in those 3 levels of controlled, risky, and desperate than, say, Powered by the Apocalypse, where it may not be as explicit. It's more of just like, what feels appropriate. In a Powered by the Apocalypse game, if you roll a 4 when you're fighting something and it does something, the consequence is way huge. You never expected it. It's like, okay, well, there must have been a miscommunication here. We must not have been on the same page about how dangerous of a threat this is and how badass this guy is. So I think being able to be on the same page with your players is very important in a Powered by the Apocalypse game. A game like Blades in the Dark sort of just formally, mechanicizes that discussion by talking about the 3 levels of position. And that way we sort of have a common language so that we're all exactly on the same page. When I say, you go to attack this guy and I go, okay, that's a desperate action. You're like, what? Why is that a desperate action? I said, oh, this guy he was trained at the Eruvian schools of blade mastery. He's been wielding a sword before he knew how to walk. He's a consummate professional, a killer with more than 100 men slain under his blade in formal duels. He's a blade master of utmost power. And you're like, oh, okay, well, damn, okay, well, then we have something to consider differently, right? So that's kind of where I would say that a PbtAs. For sure. Strat, what do you think is the single most important TTRPG to have played for broadening one's horizons? Powered by the Apocalypse, I think. Yes. Powered by the Apocalypse. Not Fate. although Fate is close. Even Blaze in the Dark, but I think Powered by the Apocalypse for me, it changed the way that I thought role-playing games could even function in a way that, again, I think Fate and I think Blaze in the Dark are incredible and amazing. And I played Fate before I played Powered by the Apocalypse. I actually kind of played Fudge before Fate, and Fudge was kind of like a precursor into Fate. But like, it didn't have the same level of impact to me as Powered by the Apocalypse did. So, but I for me personally, I think it's Powered by the Apocalypse. It doesn't have to be Dungeon World, by the way. It could be any Powered by the Apocalypse game. It just changes the way that you think about the game, and I think it's incredibly powerful and has had a huge impact on the industry. I mean, like, in my personal opinion, outside of obviously Dungeons and Dragons would probably be number one. Vampire the Masquerade might be like number two. Basic role playing and all of its derivatives, the Call of Cthulhu's and stuff, probably number three. But a lot of those are like, in the past. Those are in the 80s, the 70s, the 90s. In the new millennium in 2000, I think Powered by the Apocalypse is the game that has changed role playing the most, certainly in the last 20 years. And then even in the grand specter of all role playing games, going back at least 50 years, I would say it's in the top, top three, top four. So for sure. 5 random questions. How old do you think your average viewer is? I actually know the answer to that, Calatrix. It's like 37 or something. Mid to late 30s is the average age of our viewers. So YouTube tells me that. So I do know this. So given that you have a lot of experience with Fate and PbtA, what would you say each of them are better or worse at than the other? When would you use one versus the other? That's a really tough question. Fate, I think, is better for an outcome that you want control over. Like, I don't know how to say it. Fate, I'm going to use the term fudging, but Fate allows you to fudge both as the GM and as the player a lot more freely. And we're okay with that because that's why we're playing Fate, because it has the narrative currency of Fate. So if you want to emulate something really, really like superheroes, if you want to emulate superheroes really well, Fate to me is a better example of this, because the power of the Fate point as a narrative currency to be able to say, I invoke this aspect or I compel this aspect. You are using these currencies to deliberately shape and push the game in different directions. And in a sense, in Fate, if the GM says, oh ho ho, but he springs an ambush upon you and you're all captured, right? I'm going to say that is a complication and I'm compelling these things, and here's a Fate point. Do you guys accept them? And everybody goes, yeah, okay. Then you accept them. Then that is a very different game than Powered by the Apocalypse. Powered by the Apocalypse is much more of like, I don't know what's going to happen. We don't have an agenda. We're going to roll the dice and we're going to find out together. The agenda is less set, if that makes any sense. Why is fudging in Fate okay, but not in 5th edition? Because fudging in Fate, and I use the term fudging. When I say fudging in Fate, I'm not sure, BH, if you know how Fate works, but Fate uses this currency called a Fate point. It is not like a hero point from Pathfinder 2. It is not like inspiration from 5th edition. It's very, very different. A Fate point is a currency that the GM can award to a player in order to say that something happened. So, for example, let's say that you're attacked. And in my story, I want the party to be captured. Okay, they're going to be captured. They're going to be ambushed by the villain. And they're going to be captured and sent to prison. That's tough to do in 5th edition. That's tough to do in Pathfinder 2, right? The party wants to fight back. And then maybe they end up getting killed. Or you cheat. Or you say... and you're like, okay, we'll make a combat. But you're like, but I really want this to happen. in a Fate game, we are trying to essentially make our game like a TV show or like a movie. And so in a Fate game, the players understand this. There's no lying going on. I say, hey, the King's Guards surround you. There's 20 steel-tipped crossbow bolts pointed at each of your hearts. Take them away to the dungeons. You've messed with me for the last time, you no good scoundrels. And then I go, okay, guys, everyone gains it. I'm going to give everyone a fate point for this complication, this sort of like, oh no, cut to commercial, this cliffhanger, and you're all captured. And everyone goes, cool. There's no like, oh my God, that's lying, that's cheating. My character would never be captured like that. Like, that's not how this game works. That's not the way Fate works. Lance called them fiat points, and he's correct. The same thing is true, by the way, for a player in a Fate game. In a Fate game, a player might say, hey, I have an aspect of my character. They are the best thief in the land. I'm going to spend this fate point that I have, that I earned through playing the game, and I'm going to invoke my aspect of best thief in the land. And I'm going to say that, I've broken into this building before, and I already know a secret way in. And the GM goes, that sounds awesome. Yes, I will take your fate point, and you can go do your awesome, cool thing that makes you the best thief in the land. Fate is a game about exchanging narrative meta currencies between each other so that we push the game in a direction that is thematically and tonally on the same path. And everybody has to be bought into that, because if you're not bought into that, you are going to have a lot of problems. In a movie, superhero movie or something like that. Spider-Man, I'm thinking of like the first Spider-Man movie. Spider-Man's at the parade, and who ends up almost falling to their death? Well, it's Mary Jane. Of course it's Mary Jane. It's his would-be girlfriend, right? That's the example of like in a normal game, you'd be like, really? Out of all the people that could fall, it's her. Like, what are the odds here? In the second movie of Spider-Man, I'm talking about the original Tobey Maguire movies. I know I'm being old-fashioned here. In the original, Doc Ock goes to the bank. Who does he kidnap? Aunt May. What are the odds of that? In a comic book, the odds are 100%. And in Fate, we use this by having fate points. A character like Spider-Man might have an aspect on his character sheet, which is like, my family and my friends are everything to me. And the GM can say, hey, I'm going to mess with you. I'm going to make your friend be the target. I'm going to make your family the target of this enemy's attack, but I am using your character against yourself, and here's a fate point in return. So that's why I said it's like, it's not fudging. It's actually, but I am just making shit up to make things difficult for you. But that's like the point of the game. So that was a very long-winded explanation of fate, but that is why it is not fudging, by the way. Bernardo says that for him, fate opened his mind so much. Well, that's awesome. Again, it's a great game. I'm not saying that it's not. It's just PbtA fate. I still went into fate with this idea of I kind of know what I want to have happen, and the fate points allow me to shape the story directly to go in that direction. PbtA really opened my mind to this idea of a completely emergent story that we were all writing and yet no one was writing. It's like we were like, the whole group was both the author and the viewer, or they were the director and the audience at the same time. It's a very unique effect that is really strange to me. Yeah, there's a lot of people who discuss whether Dungeon World is a good start or not for Powered by the Apocalypse, because there's a lot of things that they did in Dungeon World to hack it, to make it feel like D&D. Dungeon World came out like less than a year after Apocalypse World came out. And so at the time, there was no concept of like this Apocalypse World revolution. So, I could both recommend Dungeon World, because I think on one hand, things like Strength, Dex, Int, Con, Wint, Strength, Dex, Con, Int, Wiz, Charisma, hit points, fighter, cleric, wizard will make you kind of go like, okay, I see what they're trying to do here. But on the other hand, it can also reinforce potentially, old habits that might deny you some of the full benefits of the PbtA experience. So I'm kind of torn on that one. Question: have you ever used a GM emulator Oracle system like the MGME? What are your thoughts on adding a system like that to another TTRPG? Joseph, I have not, but there are people on our Discord. I mean, yes, I have. I own the GME, and we've used oracles, but my general consensus is I don't use them as much as some other people. Some people in our Discord and in our community, like Ben Asaro, he uses them almost exclusively. In fact, he as a GM, so he really thinks that they are fantastic. He loves being able to, as Blades in the Dark would call it, disclaim decision making. Right? He doesn't want to be biased and influence the action. He wants to find out what's going to happen as much as everybody else, and so he really likes using Game Master Emulator / other oracles. He's always on the lookout for a new oracle table. What are your thoughts on adding a system like that to another TTRPG? I mean, there's a ton of TTRPGs that could use them. You can use oracle systems they're kind of system agnostic. You can kind of use them wherever you want to use them. But they're not my favorite thing. I think they're fine, but they're not my favorite thing. It's the mana thing. Do you want me to toss you a summary of the Godbound rules for it? Yeah, Stray, if you want to send me something on Discord, you can do that. I'll take a look at it. I would love to see an updated Dungeon World with more modern PbtA mechanics. Well, GM Scott, Sage and Adam have basically said, they own the license to Dungeon World. I think they've basically said they're not going to do a second edition. There's like 1 million house rules and hacks out there. There's unlimited worlds of adventure. There's like a couple hacks of that hack that are out there. Mostly people trying to, change certain things that feel kludgy and move away from things. But yeah, I mean, overall, I don't know. The game, I'll be honest with you, I own it. I've never read it yet. There's a PbtA game called Fellowship, not Fellowship of the Ring. It's called Fellowship, and it is apparently a very good, like, Lord of the Rings epic fantasy quest PbtA hack in a medieval fantasy sense. So that might be worth taking a look at as well, GM Scott. But also check out, like, some of those other games that I talked about. John, Dungeon World's ideas of classes determining what moves and skills you have was a clever merging of traditional narrative RPGs. Is that common in PbtA? Yes. That's what they all do. Pretty much. Yes. Something more brutish would be cool. I don't want to have to reskin root myself. Ain't got the time for that. Yeah, I feel that. I myself want to reskin root. Actually, this is kind of going off on a separate tangent, but like, I don't know if we have time for this, but like, none of them are better than the other ones, but like Magpie Games, here we go. Where are they? There they are. Magpie. They have been, oh, come on. It won't. There we go. Magpie. I was trying to get the symbol. Here we go. Magpie Games has been doing it really great. And I really like the iteration of design that they have been doing with each of their games. And, I thought, I don't even know where it is, but, oh, here it is. Like, I thought like Masks was incredible. And then I thought they did an even better job with Root. And Root is still really, really good for what it does. It's a very, very crunchy game with some really, really good political aspects to it. But like what they did in the Avatar RPG is like completely crazy. And again, I think for me, it's pretty solid to where I would think I would want to be with a PbtA game. I just think it's really, really, really good. Anyways, I guess I could talk more about that in a second. I just want to make sure I don't miss any questions here. Lurch Money question: have you ever run or played Rapana Thuk or the World's Largest Dungeon? I have played in World's Largest Dungeon several times. I think it's horrible. Have I ever run or played Rapana Thuk? Yes. I own every single copy of Rapana Thuk. I own the original 3 modules, R1, R2, R3 from Necromancer Games. I own Rapana Thuk Reloaded, which came out for 3.5 edition, the one in the box set. And then, more recently, I really got to organize all this stuff, people. It's crazy how much stuff you get. Where the hell is that box set? Who knows? Oh, screw it. Anyways, yes, I've run Rapana Thuk many, many times, and I own them all. And it's fun. It's a little bit like, oh, death, gore, you're going to die, everything's going to kill you. It's kind of Tomb of Horrors-esque at times, but it's awesome. It's fun. I mean, Bill Webb and Clark Peterson, awesome. I love the old Necromancer game stuff, and just fantastic. So, yes, I have played that. You want Samu Root, don't you? Yes, somewhat, sort of, yes, kind of, sort of, so, yes. I guess the question is then, what is your favorite PbtA? I apologize if it's been answered. So that's a very difficult question, Ryan, and I'll walk you through that in a second here as I get caught up. Let's just say in my brain, Root is not colorful animals. It's brutal Redwall Game of Thrones. Ryan, the guy who created the guy who created the board game Root, which is what Root is based off of, and even the people who wrote Root, it is deliberately juxtaposed. They constantly use Game of Thrones as a reference in this game. In fact, I mean, I think it even says somewhere in the beginning about the inspirations. I think it mentions this. So yes, I mean, it's very much supposed to be I mean, arguably you could argue that's part of the coolness of Root. You could totally play it as like, we're vagabonds. We operate outside of the system so that we can do right. We're like Robin Hoods. We don't exist, we exist outside the system, and we do what we need to do in order to make things right again. And we're all cutesy animals. But you could also do it as like a very, sort of Animal Farm-esque, critique of modern day politics and intrigue, and and you could really go harsh and deep with it. In fact, we read this game, we loved it, we're gonna play it, but like immediately when I read this game, I was like, okay, immediately I want to hack this thing to Game of Thrones, right? Like the Starks are wolves, right? Like the Targaryens are like lizard dragon people. The Lannisters are cats or like lions or something like that, right? Like I immediately wanted to like make it Game of Thrones, but using the Root mechanics. I just thought that was really fantastic. I do agree Magpie's on fire with their PbtA offerings. They're winning a bunch of rewards. It's fantastic. But yeah, I will answer what is my favorite PbtA in a second. Do I have a favorite crunchy space exploration sci-fi TTRPG? I do not, because I don't really like crunchy space exploration sci-fi TTRPGs. I really like Star Trek Adventures by Modiphius, 2D20 system that I played recently, this last year. But I was always intrigued by Traveler. But sci-fi has never been... I love sci-fi. I love Star Trek. I probably know more about Star Trek than I know about like D&D. But like, yeah. Crunchy, though? No. My favorite sci-fi game is Scum and Villainy, but that is a Blaze in the Dark hack of for space exploration, a la Cowboy Bebop, a la Star Wars, a la Firefly. Love that, but I would hardly call that a crunchy space exploration game, so I would not say that. Sylvie, hey, dude, did you check out the one-page rules game I told you about? No, I'm sorry, I did not. I'm ashamed. I am ashamed. Sorry, I did not. Fate and PbtA covers, hardcovers feel so much better than PbtA. You know, I love the digest size. It feels good in the hand. It's solid. They have a ribbon. You gotta love the ribbon. Sometimes I wonder if Derek has a bag of holding that reaches into it out of frame. It's just, you know, it's like Mary Poppins it. No, I just have games everywhere. We got R.A. Salvatore's Demon Wars, the Reformation Core Rulebook. We were talking about this. Oh, here we go. Here's Werewolf the Apocalypse 2nd edition, bought at Half Price Bookstore, God knows how long ago. Cool cover though, look at that. Look at the cool comic. All right, anyways. Does Scum and Villainy qualify as crunchy for you? I really like it so far. I can't wait to run it. No, I wouldn't call Scum and Villainy crunchy. It's a PbtA game. Yeah, Traveler is probably the game that I'm most familiar with, but again, I'm not, you know. That's kind of how it's kind of how I feel, Casey. I love the idea of it, but it never hits right. And I think the reason for that is it's simulation versus emulation. And I think this is, for me, this is probably one of the most important things. Oh, you know what? Okay, we're going to talk about two things, unless somebody comes in with some crazy question or some crazy tip. Number one, my favorite PbtA game, Ryan had asked, is Monster Hearts. This is the first edition. It's currently on the second edition. A story game, about the messy lives of teenage monsters, by Avery Alder, sometimes called Avery McDalno. For me, this game redefined what role-playing games could be. But what I want to point out here, which is very interesting, is how this game has led to an evolution, dare I say, revolution in the PbtA space. And really, it follows a track of things. And so we're going to have to get into some rules text here. Oh, wait. Do we have another game? Yeah, hold on a sec. We need some more games. Okay. All right, we're back. Okay. So, this is Apocalypse World. This is what started off this whole thing. And Apocalypse World, despite the fact that people don't really realize this, essentially, I mean, Blaze in the Dark, John Harper says is a hack of Apocalypse World, but Apocalypse World had this. You know what I need to get, people? I need to get another camera mounted here so that I can show you books. So I might have to do that. So Apocalypse World had a thing called the countdown clock for harm. And it was basically a form of hit points. You just only had like 4 hit points. Okay. And, certain weapons did like 1 harm or 2 harm, like a shotgun or a chainsaw might do like 2 or 3 harm, a bomb might do like 4 harm. And when your harm clock, because it was called a countdown clock, believe it or not, was filled up, your character was in trouble and could die. Now, this concept of a clock and a countdown clock was carried over into some of the earliest PbtA game hacks, like Monster of the Week, which is sort of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer supernatural hack, and of course, Dungeon World. Now, Dungeon World got rid of the clock and just replaced it with normal Dungeons & Dragons hit points. But the idea of you basically having a form of damage that you would take, and then your character would be in trouble or dead, was still pretty present even in these original offerings. The game that really changed that was Monster Hearts. And what Monster Hearts did that was so interesting is this is the original book. It's page 28, which said it's called Conditions. It says, characters can gain conditions, capital C, over the course of play. If you take advantage of a condition that someone has while making a move against them, you add 1 to your roll. In order to take advantage of a condition mechanically, though, we need to take advantage of the condition fictionally as well. This is the when you do it principle. So in other words, Monster Hearts kind of got rid of the hit point concept. And instead, when your character attacked other people, you gave them conditions. Now, there wasn't a list of conditions. In fact, I remember when I played Monster Hearts the first time, people would write them on note cards and give them to people. So, like, for example, I got beat up. My character got beat up, like, in the high school locker room. And, he was given a condition which said that he was, like, ashamed because he got attacked. It wasn't about physical damage and tracking hit points. No, he had this ashamed condition. And in Monster Hearts, again, conditions could be anything. And then it could be drained. It could be exhausted. It could be a social pariah. It could be internet slut, right? Like, whatever condition could be anything. The moves in the game gave you conditions. By succeeding at a move, you inflicted a condition upon a person. And they could be anything. Now, that has certain advantages, and I like it, but it also was a little bit, kind of wonky. Enter a game Masks, okay, which is, again, where Magpie enters the situation. What Magpie did is Magpie took conditions to the next level, and instead they defined them. Okay. And so now when you hurt someone or damage someone or attack someone, one of the results is you, quote, give them a condition. It's not damage, it's a condition. And the list of conditions in the game is pretty much set out. I'm trying to see if they have a convenient list for this. One of the problems with most Powered by the Apocalypse games is they are written absolutely horribly and have horrible indexes, and they're very difficult to use. You have to kind of like memorize the entire game and then play with them. Okay, here we go. In the game of Masks, there are 5 conditions: angry, afraid, guilty, hopeless, and insecure. They function like hit points because if a character has run out of conditions, then their character is taken out. But what it means is that instead of something simple like hit point damage, if I blast, and Masks is a teenage superhero game, by the way, if I blast someone with my neutron power ray, or like let's say my character is sort of like a tough fighting, scrappy Captain America type character, and he gets, but he's, a teenager, and he gets hit by the enemy Baron Von Doom, and Baron Von Doom smashes him with his repulsor ray, and my character is unable to dodge out of the way, and he gets hit with it and goes sailing over the end over end, and crashes into a car, leaving a massive dent / crater in the car. My character wouldn't take damage. I would choose, maybe with the GM's help, a condition that reflects how my character is. Think about the movie. I might take angry, right? My character is upset that just happened. Like, damn it, you'll never get away with this, right? My character could take hopeless, like they become dejected by the power of Von Doom or Von Death or whatever. We'll never beat him. Take care, Savo Ray. We'll see you later, buddy. And so conditions are really, really cool. The problem with conditions are the moment you start getting attacked, the moment you start having anything happen to you, you start accumulating these conditions, it could feel a bit wonky. I should note, by the way, that conditions, the way that they are formally declared, was introduced in Masks, but to a certain extent, perfected in this year's EN World, any award-winning Powered by the Apocalypse game of the year, Thirsty Sword Lesbians. They did it really, really well. Second place, silver, was Root. Now, Root doesn't have the conditions like these two do. Instead, what Root uses is a series and system of resource tracks. It has a track for your character's injury. Think of them like hit points. You have like 5 hit points, but you also have a track for how worn down or fatigued your character is. You have another track for how durable your items are, okay? In Root, when you take damage, the player gets to mark where they are taking these, damage. So the Root gives your character, it's like you had like 4 or 5 different hit point pools, but the hit point pools mean different things, right? Like my character is fighting and doing something and I'm, losing exhaustion. My character isn't getting hurt. They're just getting tired. They're getting worn down. They're getting weak. Okay, my character is moving through the forest off the beaten path. Well, they're not getting tired and they're not taking damage, but their gear is getting tore up. Their cloaks are tearing. Their armor buckles are getting caught and snagged. Their sword is getting dull from hacking through brush. They are taking wear on their weapons and their armor. So Root gives you these cool tracks that you can use to sort of simulate how the damage is working. Well, the game, which has not come out yet, it's available in PDF, but it's not out yet. It's still, yet to be delivered via Kickstarter. Magpie's most recent PbtA game, Avatar, kind of combines these two. It has the tracks of Root, but it has the conditions of Masks. I really like that because it gives you these really fun, flavorful, powerful narrative conditions for suffering damage, but it also gives the player that fun resource gamey element of tracking your tracking your hit points, but you have different tracks that you could track. Is my character becoming hurt? Is my character becoming angry? Is my character becoming worn down, exhausted? I think the Avatar system does a really, really, really good job of that, and I think it's a really well-designed game. I know that there was a lot of people that were upset about it because it didn't include 850. They wanted a kineticist book. They wanted a, 500 moves to specifically simulate, oh, this is a flying kick flame attack. This is the earth dragon punch shockwave move. Like they wanted a Pathfinder 2 Avatar game. They did not do that at all, and they were very smart and they were very brilliant for not doing that. Bending in that game is just the way you do something. It's not what you do. The what you do might be, I am going to damage this person. How do I accomplish that? Well, if I'm a sword master or I have my trusty boomerang, I might just be boomeranging them. But if I'm a waterbender, I might be, swelling up a wave of water and crashing into them, or using a water whip. And if I'm a firebender, I might do a series of powerful kicks and punches, and a gout of flame strikes them. How you do it is just narrative. It's fluff. It's fictional. It's fun. It's what you do that's important. And it's a great way to give people their... It's how you have a game like Avatar, and you can have a character like Sokka, or have a character like Suki be really cool and compelling and fun, and not just be completely useless next to the Tophs and the Kataras and the Aangs and the Korras. And so I think it's a really cool idea and really smart idea of how they did that. So that is my favorite PbtA game. And what I was going to say lastly about KC, about the idea of sci-fi RPGs, really quickly. Emulation versus simulation. Emulation is when you feel like the game, you're pretending to be smart. When you're pretending to be the way that the system wants you to be. This is very complicated. I'm trying to try to think about this better. Okay. In a sci-fi game, people solve things through technology. I do not understand warp plasma dynamics, but my character is supposed to understand warp plasma dynamics. And so what ends up happening in the game is you say a bunch of technobabble, right? And you end up making a check. And you're like, I don't actually understand what's going on. I, the player, Derek, cannot actually solve this problem the way that my character would solve it. Because these are all made up technologies. And even if they were real, I wouldn't understand them. This technology in a sci-fi game is technology. But from my point of view, it's magic. In a fantasy game, magic is magic. I have a much easier time in a fantasy RPG being like, well, I don't know how this magic works. I speak several words of power. I call upon the energy within my soul, and I wield the earth to, heal itself. In a sci-fi game, I would be doing that, but I would be doing that using technology and learning and skill. But to me, Derek, it's all just a magic. It's just a skill check, because I don't actually have the ability to come up with anything. If we were playing a sci-fi game, I'd be like, oh, well, I reversed the polarity on the gravity, meter. And it's like, we all understand what's happening, but I'm not simulating being a sci-fi technician. I'm emulating, I'm pretending to be a sci-fi technician. And I think that takes something away from it for me. For me, it takes something away from me. Whereas, of course I have to emulate being a wizard, because magic is inherently unknowable. And what would that, that's what we understand magic to be. But in sci-fi, it's supposed to be technology. It's supposed to be something real. And that's why it's harder for me, because it's not, it's not real. And the game makes me feel like it's not. In other words, when I play D&D, I'll put it another way. When I play D&D and I'm a wizard, I feel like a wizard. When I play Pathfinder, I feel like a wizard. Especially if I play Dungeon World, I really feel like a wizard, because I'm calling upon vast ancient powers and descending them. But I never feel smart as a wizard, even though my intelligence is really high. Because what does feeling smart in an RPG mean? It means what? You're making a check and the GM is going to tell you what your character knows. That doesn't make me feel smart. I'm just like, okay, we're pretending that my character is smart, but I don't really feel smart. But I'm okay with it because I have magical powers and wizards. But in a sci-fi game, a character like Data or Geordie LaForge or Jadzia Dax or, Miles O'Brien or, a million other people, they are smart. They are solving the problem technologically, and I have no way to access that. Only thing I can do is just sort of, basically make up some bullshit and then make a check. And it's essentially like having a high intelligence in a D&D game where you're like, my character is very smart. Are you smart? No. And it's hard to translate it, because what does that mean? So I can't solve problems in a sci-fi game because I'm not a master of warp field dynamics. My character can, and I just have to kind of sit back and watch them be cool. So that's my problem with sci-fi games for the most part. And Bernardo apparently agrees with me. So awesome. Thank you, Bernardo. All right. Well, it's 9:00. It's 9:10. Thank you, everybody who came out. People came out today. Huge. Love it. Obviously, it's great for the stream, but, I'd love to see the support. It's awesome that you all decide to support us in such a way. John, GM Scott, Rick, Self-Confessed Cynic, Ryan Dale, Overlord Forum, Booth B, Combat Medic Bush, excuse me, all signed up, all donated, all tipped. Everybody's helping support the Knights, and we love to see it. So happy to keep you entertained while you work on Circuit Theory. Yes, this is the ASMR RPG hour. So we're playing some Dungeons & Dragons tomorrow. Heavily hacked. And we'll be back next week, Tuesday and Thursday, for some live streams. Like I said, today was just vibes. I knew we were going to have a lot of people not able to attend today. I just didn't want to get into it. But we do want to turn this into a kind of a workshop. I'd like to work on more problems, get something more interactive. I'd like to get some other people in here, other nights and stuff like that. Make it a bit more nightlifey like we used to have. Maybe have some guests in here. Well, I don't know. We'll play around with it. Leave some comments below as you're liking and subscribing, of course. But leave some comments below. What do you want us to do with this Thursday slot? Tuesday is supposed to be for playing games. Thursday is supposed to be for talking about games. We spent the last, God who knows, 6 months talking about Pathfinder 2 spells. But now that that's over, we can, approach different things. So, the queue is open. So, definitely take advantage of that. Is this the second time John has killed me? I believe it is, GM Scott. I believe it is. He's got it. He's got your number. To be fair, Scott, I think you've taken out a couple people with your arrows of slaying. So that's really cool. So I'll tell you what I am working on. I want to create a bot because there's no bot that does this. I really want to make sure. I want to see if I can access the API. I want to find out who. I want my chat window to know who the current hype boss is. And if you're the hype boss, I want you to be able to have exclusive access to chat commands that you could put into the chat that will give you abilities to do things on screen that I don't even have control over. But if somebody kills you and they become the hype boss, then they gain those powers. I have to read the API documentation. I have to figure out if I can actually access that. But I actually want the hype boss to actually, I don't know. Maybe I'll put them in charge of, my soundboard or something, my stream deck. And you might say, well, Derek, someone might abuse that. Well, if someone's abusing it, go kill them and you take over and you become the pipe boss. Oh yeah. GF Scott, like, subscribe, go join the Discord. Yeah. Hey, it's a brand new month. Couple things. I'm going to make a video about this. Last month we released our first issue of our new monthly e-zine, that we're calling Battle Cry. And it's about D20 right now, Pathfinder with some 5e compatible stuff in there, about ideas about changing the game, adding things to the game, articles on the game. Our first issue talked about random encounters, how to build random encounter tables, how to use random encounter tables. We also, 2 months ago, released our Dark of Winter PDF. It's about 50, 60 pages long. It's an entire document about how to run Pathfinder 2 in a very procedural, rogue-like fashion. It's a very mechanical version of Pathfinder 2. It kind of board gamifies Pathfinder 2 a little bit, but it really focuses on the tactical combat and having this really, it has some elements from Blades in the Dark, about downtime versus adventure time. So that was available in July. Battlecry episode issue 1 was available in August. Battlecry issue 2 is coming out in September. But because we need to make sure that stuff is limited time offer, sometime mid-month this month, we are going to be removing access to Dark of Winter PDF and issue 1. And they're going to be available eventually, we're hoping, on some sort of online store or something that you can buy. But right now, if you sign up, even though it's September, you will still get Dark of Winter and issue 1 of Battle Cry, in addition to issue 2, which will come out later this month. But sometime middle of this month, we're going to be locking out Dark of Winter and locking out issue 1. And the only way you'll be able to get it is if you can, get it if you had already bought it or were already a member, or if you want to pay extra to get it. So just kind of keep that in mind. We eventually, we don't want to produce 30 documents and then someone signs up a champion and gets every single access to that. If you want access to our exclusive PDFs, you do have to sign up for our Patreon. You do have to sign up at the champion level. That's the $10 a month level. In addition to a whole bevy of other access and all sorts of other stuff, you get access also to our published content. So definitely check that out, and like and subscribe. If you're not interested in joining the Discord, that's cool too, but like and subscribe, and we appreciate it for the YouTube algorithm. All right. I think that'll do it. I will see you all next week. I hope you have a great Labor Day weekend, and everyone stay safe out there and enjoy it. And hopefully you get to play some games, because that's what we're here for. And, I'm listening, I'm learning from all of you as well. So, join the Discord and teach me some things. I'd love to learn from your experiences. There's games that you've played that I haven't played. I love being able to be exposed to everything and everybody in this hobby, and this channel is just a fantastic way for me to do that. And I hope that you join me on this awesome RPG journey that we can go through together. And so hopefully I will see you on the Discord. Take a look. Patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time on Knights of Last Call.